Hi there. Today we're going to talk about the book My Life in the Shadows by Sam Alexander. Now, this is not a book about Cliff Richard's backing group. It's rather this book, and it's about his life, his career in various parts of the covert operations elements of the British Army. Sam Alexander hails from this area, from Merseyside, and he was a member of the Royal Marines Reserves at Morpeth Dock. And during the time frame he was there, I possibly met him because I had a friend who was on the permanent staff there, and quite often I would visit the bar. He then joined the regular Royal Marines and attempted selection for the SBS. Then, after a spell in Civvy Street, where amongst other things he joined the police, he returned to the army, to the INT Corps, the Intelligence Corps, and with a view to joining 14 Intelligence Company, the Covert Operations Surveillance Unit for Northern Ireland. So he did that not as a member of the spook cell, as the support staff, the intelligence support staff, but as an operator. And in the book he describes being sent to Camp 1 for the initial selection. Now, this has been described in several other books that I've reviewed, so I'll just mention a couple of the points that he emphasizes. One, for the observation memory training, they used a film about tribes people in Borneo and the uses they had for bamboo. And the guys were in a rather stuffy room after a very arduous day's training, and then they had to do a written test on the elements of the film. And he said many years later, when he was back there, they were still using the same film. Another, the directing staff would use a lot of different swerves to produce dislocation of expectation. So on one occasion, they were told to parade in their swimming costumes, and then the instructor said, "Listen guys, it's a bit cold, we'll cancel the swimming test and you can go and get your breakfast." And as they're being marched to the cookhouse, rejoicing that they don't have to do this swim test, they met the chief PTI, who was an SAS PTI, and he said, "Where are these guys going?" "Oh, it's a bit cold, staff, so we thought we'd cancel the swimming test." "Well, we'll warm them up, march them into the gym." And it was all set up for milling, the rough and ready, no holes barred version of boxing that they use to test aggression. So from there, it was Camp 2, Ponty, and learning CQB, pistol to a very high standard, vehicle surveillance, foot surveillance drills, big exercise in Bristol to finish off, getting all the skills in an urban setting. And he was then past all that, even though there were people, one officer in particular was actually binned right on the very final day. So they're very selective. He was sent to North Det, Limavady, operation around Londonderry area. And one of the things he mentions is one of the guys on the team at the time was Andy McNabb. And Andy McNabb had described his time at North Det in his book, Immediate Action. And he and Sam did an op together where they had to, it was up on the lock, and they had to observe and search a hide site where the terrorists had hidden weapons. And to do this, they brought over the members of the boat troop from Hereford to insert them. So it was quite an interesting operation. They had to use aerial reconnaissance to plan it and so on. It's all in the book, and it's very, very interesting. He later returned to 14th Int as an instructor at Camp 2, and one of his specialties was training the guys in rural OPs. And in the book, he details the very comprehensive orders and preparation for a drop-off and a pickup of team members for a rural observation point. And it really does give an insight into how that particular unit operated. Following his time with the Det, he was a member of the Intelligence Corps surveillance detachments in many places, some in the UK, the Falklands and so on, but primarily in Germany. And at the time, it was still the Soviet threat, was the Cold War. And their task was to operate against Soxmis, which was the Soviet mission, which was a reciprocal arrangement allowing the different nations who were based in Germany at the time to operate in the territory of the other side. So we had Bricksmith, which went into the Soviet zone and tried to evade Soviet surveillance and snoop on Soviet military maneuvers and East German military maneuvers. And similarly, Soxmis came over into the British and the American zones, and it was the job of Sam's teammates to keep track of the Soviets, because there was only certain places they were allowed to go, and they tried to evade this. So that was all rather interesting. Another thing he did was to do liaison operations with the German federal surveillance authorities, particularly the customs. And Sam didn't rate them particularly highly. Their third-party awareness was lacking, and they were quite overt, actually, in their methods of surveillance and videotaping of targets. There was a big IRA threat in West Germany at the time against the British Army, so that was also one of the roles of the Intelligence Corps surveillance people, tracking the IRA over there. He took part in a detached service with SIS, Secret Intelligence Service, at their training establishment, where he was part of a team that had to impose surveillance on the guys going through officer training to be a case officer in SIS. So they had to service dead drops, do brush passes, agent contacts and so on, while the surveillance guys would follow them. And then there was a big debrief at the end, and there was lessons learned. So that's quite I don't think anyone's ever written about that before. And then he, at the time, MI5 surveillance component used guys who had experience in the Det to flesh out their teams. And Sam spent quite a period doing this. And in my opinion, the Army contribution really took MI5 from the surveillance effort being the old Watcher service, which mainly used to follow the Soviets in a counterintelligence role, into the capability where they could be a counter-terrorist surveillance force, able to go into diverse housing estates and really impose surveillance on modern terrorist targets. And it was the experience of the guys from the Det who really gave A4, the MI5 department, the methodology to do this, or the big technological element as well. And MI5 were quite well supplied on that front, but it was the tradecraft on the ground really that it leavened the A4's effort considerably. So all this means that Sam Alexander's without a doubt one of the most experienced surveillance operators in the country. The book is fascinating. It's written in the familiar military style, where there's a lot of light relief and banter and so on. You know, they don't take themselves seriously, they take their work seriously. He got to Sergeant Major rank, and he was awarded the MBE. There's a picture of him being awarded his decoration by Her Majesty. And it's a fairly little known book. It's not really kind of prominent in the literature. I came across it just by chance, and I really was glad I did. Fascinating book, and I really do recommend it.